particularly Black owners, you don't have to have a PhD in computer science to have a business in AI. You can actually enter this space at a lower barrier than any time ever. If you want to think of it, it's AI provides a great equalizer for many people because many of the software and the tools and the techniques are actually free.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just saying everybody can play. It just doesn't have to be Silicon Valley. I'm a representative of that. I'm in Arizona. I'm not in Silicon Valley. I anticipate the pushback just because of who I am. So, but it doesn't matter because most people don't know what I know. So, and I know that. So, it's what led me to study AI though was my son being impacted with autism, and in my mind, and I'm not a scientist like a biologist or a chemist and so forth. I'm not a doctor, have no interest. I have no interest in blood or nursing as my mother is. That's just not my interest. But what I did have in my hand was computer science. I knew in advance that I wanted to solve problems that were very hard because I was a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is I took the jobs that were the career path that will allow me to solve hard problems. So instrumentation and control, which is what I did, allowed me to do that. I just want to, lay that or frame this by saying that I'm not an MIT graduate. I'm not a Stanford graduate. And I am a representative of what's possible if you choose to believe and choose to take this path.
Amen. Welcome to another edition of HBCU Titans with Kenn Rashad, the show where we highlight and profile extraordinary HBCU graduates who are doing extraordinary things in the communities in which they serve. And my guest today is someone whose work is centered in one of the most important conversations happening right now, artificial intelligence and the future it's creating for all of us. Believe me when I tell you, she's been involved with AI long before AI became sexy. She is the founder and CEO of DS Innovations, an artificial intelligence and technologies consulting firm that helps organizations think critically about how to use data, technology, and innovation to solve real-world problems. Through her work, she's been at the forefront of conversations around AI, product development, and civic engagement, helping leaders and communities understand not just what technology can do, but what it should do. She spent more than 3 years in technology and engineering, building a career in spaces where people who look like us haven't always been present, but where our perspective has always been needed. And today, her focus is really clear, making sure we're not just reacting to the future of technology, but helping to shape it. Because truth is, AI isn't just about machines, it's about access, it's about opportunity, and it's about who's in the room when decisions are being made that will impact the next generation and people who look like us. So, without further ado, let's welcome to the stage a Southern University graduate, and full disclosure, she is my cousin, she is family, Dr. Loretta Cheeks. Cuz, how are you?
I'm doing well. And I'm so glad to know that you're doing well.
I am doing perfectly well and better than I've ever been before. Thank you for taking a few minutes to come to the show and to for us to witness your expertise in this field, because without question, when I tell you guys, look, we got all these little sexy tools and websites where you can go and put in prompts, but I'm trying to tell you right now, this is the sister. She is one of the people who kind of like made this all possible. Okay, so we are standing on her shoulders. And she is going to make us all the more intelligent by the time this show is over with. So, Loretta, even though I gave them just a brief introduction of who you are and what you do, if you would, give us just a brief introduction of who you are and what you do.
My name is Dr. Loretta Cheeks. I earned a PhD from Arizona State University. I'm an undergrad of Southern University, A&M, in Baton Rouge campus, computer science, undergrad, master's, as well as PhD. As Ken just mentioned, I started off, my trajectory went from Louisiana and working in industry and moved on to Pennsylvania. I worked in industry and then came to Arizona. I worked in industry for over 20 years. And then I pivoted to earn the PhD, focusing on artificial intelligence and research in that area. Um, I just want to, lay the or frame this by saying that I'm not an MIT graduate. I'm not a Stanford graduate, and I am a representative of what's possible if you choose to believe and choose to take this path.
Amen. So, Loretta, let me ask you now, because like I said, we're kind of like in this revolution. And when you look at where we are today, how do you look at your work today, and how would you define its importance in this particular movement right now, currently where we are?
Well, from different spaces. So, just even having an AI business or standing up and having the foundation to actually do that, because as much as people say it's not needed, but credentials does matter.
Hmm.
So I did the research, but right now where we are, particularly Black owners, you don't have to have a PhD in computer science to have a business in AI. You can actually enter this space at a lower barrier than any time ever. If you want to think of it, it's AI provides a great equalizer for many people because many of the software and the tools and the techniques are actually free.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's just saying everybody can play. It just doesn't have to be Silicon Valley. I'm a representative of that. I'm in Arizona. I'm not in Silicon Valley. I offer business solutions, products, and services to people all over literally the globe. And that's worked out well for me.
In 1949, Paul Tank Younger, a fullback from Grambling, signed with the Los Angeles Rams as an undrafted free agent. He went on to become a four-time Pro Bowler and later became the NFL's first black front office executive. But the way he got there says even more. When the Rams sent a scout to sign him, the offer was for $4,000. Not because he wasn't worth more, but because they thought paying the minimum would improve his odds of just making the team. But that's when Grambling coach Eddie Robinson stepped in. He pushed back by saying, look, give him $6,000. And if he isn't good enough, cut him. That single moment mattered. It wasn't just about Tank Younger. It was about HBCUs demanding respect at a time when the rest of college football was still wrestling with integration. Stories like this are why I wrote the book HBCU Sports 101, a guide to understanding black college athletics. Because it's bigger than just stats and scores. It's about culture, legacy, and the people who changed the game. You can get your copy now at KennRashad.com, signed bundles, the ebook, and more, or pick it up on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other places where books are sold.
You've kind of laid the groundwork and the foundation for kind of like where we are right now. Like you indicated, you didn't necessarily attend MIT or any of these schools that are typically associated with technology. You're an HBCU graduate and you've taken a different path, but that doesn't necessarily mean that what you've done is any less significant. But hearing what you're telling me now, it does. I beg to ask, when you put in consideration you being a leader, can you give us some perspective as to what technology leaders are thinking of right now that the public or the general public isn't necessarily aware of in terms of what we may be looking at going forward?
Absolutely. But stepping back to your last question, and then I'll get that. I'll look at I'll address the question you just asked, which
Uh-huh.
is what people are looking for, because it's two facets. It's and just give me a pen. Just say fear and anticipation. So that's the two pillars of people, meaning adoption and those who have not adopted. But going back to your previous questions on me being a business owner, but I also have a nonprofit. So
Mm.
I always think of you always, as a owner or really your civic engagement should, even if it's not a nonprofit, it should be given back. So in some capacity as well. So that's one way to make sure that you're doing something to help others come along the way so that they can be prepared. Another thing that I do, I'm on the governor's AI steering committee in Arizona, was appointed. This is the first in Arizona to have this thing. And I'm the only African American woman. No, take that back. That is not true. I am one of, it's two of
Right.
us. Well, actually, the leader of it is a beautiful sister, Whitney Daniels.
Mm.
But with that being said, it's very important wherever you are to engage. That means get yourself at the table to have conversations because AI is being shaped all around us. And this leads into your next question. And there are people who have this fear, and there are people who have anticipation. So those who have fear, they are reluctant to adoption, and they are reluctant. They may be using it in some capacity or using some parts of AI, but they're not adopting it to see how they can benefit, particularly growing their business.
Mhm.
And then there are those who are looking at anticipation. They know that AI is here, it's not going anywhere. And so they're anticipating, what would AI look like for plant management? What would AI look for the next modernization of energy? What would AI look for as an expression of the way as we know, logistics is being revamped, our space,
Mm.
whatever the industry is, you have to, if you're in that space of growth, or even have a mindset to grow, that you want to look at how things are working now and seeing where you can actually anticipate how AI can actually benefit and help. But those are the two buckets of, even from K through 12, from higher institutions. Unfortunately, our HBCUs have not adopted AI in the way that they could,
Mm.
at the pace that they could, which really disadvantages our students. But I am an example. If you wanted, you could get it.
Yeah. It's funny you mention that because I had a, uh, a guest who actually went to Grambling, and she is also a technologist, and she echoed the exact same thing that you said about our HBCUs and I guess, the need for them to make sure that they are, I guess, equipped to, to operate within the space of AI and the new opportunities that could come with it. And that includes being ready, or at the very least having curriculums in these schools to make sure that they are equipped. And she also echoed that one of the things too, and I don't necessarily think this is an HBCU problem, but you are probably more equipped to answer this than anything else, is that given where we are right now, AI is advancing so rapidly that schools on campuses aren't necessarily in a position to kind of keep up with that speed. Can you speak to that? And is there a way to possibly repair that, if any?
Oh, absolutely. It's always a way to prepare to repair. It's a matter of priorities.
Mm.
It's a matter of awakening and awareness of where we are and where we need to be. I liken it as, um, just to level set everybody where we are. We're in Industry 4.0. If for those who don't know that, we were in Industry 3.0 whenever, I think it's, let's see here, I have this chart. But yeah, so we're in the industry at 4.0. That's the what we call the race to AI. Is in and industry that includes this convergence of AI, big data, Internet of Things, cybersecurity, vamp up, and 5G, cloud computing, augmentation,
Mm.
augmented reality, XR. Then we had before that industry 3.0. And then through Industry 3.0, which is our age or my age, which is the satellite advancement. It was the race for space. And that, just think about, it's a race for space where you had satellite technology, advanced communication, automation, electronics, navigation, precision, computer and nuclear arms. Well, the unfortunate thing for most HBCUs, in that Industry 3.0, in the race to space, the priority, even from a funding perspective, was not to fund HBCUs. Matter of fact, they got no funding.
Mm.
We were fighting civil rights. This is a new era. Unfortunate, our conversation hence is very prominently underscored in this administration that a lot of our grants were cut because they were still singing the same tune, which is not that it's a wrong tune, but that there's such a disparity. And we were not looking at the problems we can necessarily like spearhead, like solve, but we framed them around diversity, inclusion, nothing wrong with that. I'm not
Right.
saying it's wrong. I am
Mhm.
just saying that if you're going to solve problems and help students to understand what kind of problems that they can solve, that's more of a palatable way to actually get funding, attract industry, change the way that even the model of funding sources and so forth. So going back to how best to prioritize, I don't know. I don't have the secret answer because HBCUs are uniquely, as your book so elaborately put it, HBCUs take literally the range of students,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And you could go there at any of these ranges and you could come out and they cultivate you where you are. And they uniquely can do that because they are teaching institutions primarily.
Right.
They pay attention to the students just to make sure that they are built up from holistic perspective. Most institutions don't do that.
Mm.
So, that's the good part. But unfortunate, it's no different, as you know, as in sports, right? So in sports, and people say, HBCUs, what do you say, missed opportunity because
Right.
a lot of
Right.
the players went to predominantly white institutions.
Right.
And that, attention to build up, at least keep the sports on a priority list and
Right.
something attractive, that same level of energy just has not been
Right.
for the institution. And I'm not just talking about STEM. I'm talking about AI in sports.
Mm.
For instance, there's a site and I don't agree with this. I'm just giving you an example. There's a site that's called enhance.com. Enhance.com is using doping to create, quote, elite performers.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to do that.
Right.
But what we can learn from is some of the technologies, the wearables, we can actually have, uh, it's a lot that can be done. Just put it
Right.
that
Right.
HBCUs are, if you think about Louisiana, even centering it, um, we know that some of the components of AI can generate music. Well,
Yeah.
we're being studied for performance. We're being studied, meaning the African body literally is being studied for performance. That is research. The music and culture, Africa in general has led the pack in terms of cultural shifting, right? Everything from jazz to blues to gospel to hip hop in the gamut, right? We have all of that uniquely. If you just study the what can be done in AI and also music, just starting in Louisiana, it would be so rich because we have Zydeco, we have jazz, we have all these different components, right? We got it
Right.
all, but
Right.
that is not being leveraged because of whatever priority. Maybe people aren't aware. Oftentimes, no different than any other institution, it doesn't add to the bottom line. So uh, it's just not a priority. And as we know, I think it should be, but
Yeah.
it
So
just has not been.
so as it relates to just Black people in general at large, whether they went to an HBCU or not, I know you've spoke quite a bit about AI and even civil engagement and the importance that, and I guess just through some of the examples that you provided, when you put in consideration AI and civic engagement, why is it important to have those two conversations simultaneously?
Absolutely. As an example, being on the AI steering committee. So when you're, this is an example. We're an AI steering committee that will set policy. Policy sets appropriation of funding. Okay, that's how it works. So appropriation of funding. If you're a think tank, you write papers that then can trigger policy changes. Right? You start a narrative just saying, "Oh, we have a gap. there's a need or whatever the conversation is. And so because being at the table allows you to influence, it allows you to step up, it allows you to make sure that our voice is, and this is very important, particularly for us Black people. If you are African American, when you're invited to these tables, don't wash yourself out because your legacy will tell the story.
Mm.
Meaning, and what that means is when you're invited to the table, if you know that surveillance could potentially harm your community or any community, you want to make sure that that AI conversation on what's safe and accountability and what measurements could be in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. That's just one gamut. As we, I don't know if you know this, but there are actually court case going on in LA right now about Facebook and the implications of social media,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So all of that is under the umbrella of AI safe and accountability. There should be, if you're a company, that's no different than in Texas, is where you are. Right now, we know that there were not any policies necessarily for when people go and dig for oil
Yeah.
and then leak holes. Well, the consequences are now being seen. There are thousands of different composites of holes that's in the ground that are leaking out into the water. So that's what happens when people are brought to the table and for whatever reason, because most people have an agenda.
Mhm.
So when these committees form, you have lobbyists in there. You have people that have different viewings. And if you care about communities at large, you want to make sure that you have a grasp on a big enough grasp on what the topic is to even say, "Oh, okay, well, for instance, agenic um, agents,
Yeah.
right? And what that looks like. Well, if you don't know what that is, then you can't speak about, well, when you
Right.
set in motion something in a workflow and it automatically sends out an email to your whole staff and the email is absolutely wrong or
Mm.
it is just really something bad, well, you have to have measures in place, but that's when the best practices and so forth. But if you don't know about those things, you're not even going to mention it because you just don't know about the topic.
Yeah.
That's why you really, when you're talking about civic engagement, make sure you're aware. You don't have to know everything, but look beyond what you do know. And that's even for me.
So let me kind of go back a little bit to something that you said where it relates to having a seat at the table, if you will, because obviously, without question, no one is going to question your credibility or your credentials. But when you do, because obviously you add a very unique perspective when I guess when you have an opportunity to speak in these closed circles or these inner circle meetings, if you will. When you are in a position where you're speaking and you're adding your perspective, do you find it difficult? Do you find that the your cohorts that you're with, do you find a lot of pushback or are your suggestions or whatever input that you do insert into these conversations, are they easily accepted or do you find a lot of pushback involved?
I anticipate the pushback just because of who I am. So,
Mm.
but it doesn't matter because most people don't know what I know. So, and I know that. So, I'm like Doug Williams and playing against somebody they just don't know what I know. So,
Right.
when I put something forward, literally, oftentimes because people don't know, they just don't say much, right? Because going back to the point, anybody could be an AI right now. Literally the
Yeah.
gamut. Like if
Yeah.
you want to be in this space of business, you could figure it out and be in it. And so therefore there are the ton of disciplines that chime in. But yeah, I made suggestions recently and there was someone and I'm that definitely pushed back, which is okay. I was like, cool. But unless you have something, when you're talking about a committee, you're talking about cooperation, a level of cooperation. So it's not your committee. So you put something on the floor, and unless somebody has something better, but the idea of pushing back, you just have to be able to defend what you're saying. For
Okay.
instance, don't tell me that you should not have some level of accountability of who's in Arizona or any state about who's doing this business that is supposed to be critical.
Yeah.
That's almost like saying, okay, the FAA don't need to know what airplanes in the air, right? I don't need to know your flight plan. Well, that's ludicrous, right? You need to know. The FAA knows every flight plan that's happening in the US. So that's just a part of what they do. So it's the same thing. So when someone says something like that, you have to push back. So what part of safe and accountability are you not wanting to address? Meaning you have to have it's not rocket science. In anything you do, it's a simple process. You have to identify who owns it. You have to identify how it's measured. You have to identify who's doing what, right? And
Mm.
so forth, and that type of thing. And so as I said, I'm very confident. Yeah, I put a lot of things before. I'm competitive at nature, so you
Okay.
have to usually tell me no really strong for me to even think you know anything.
Yeah.
For me to consider it. So yeah, that's just my makeup. Everybody isn't like that. They, accept things. They don't think critically. But I usually have done my homework. I over prepare because I anticipate just because of who I am,
Yeah.
that people won't listen. But I'm literally, um, people, dismiss that I'm a small business,
Right.
and so,
Right.
which is totally okay. But I still am going to tell you that I'm a small business, and I have been training people in the Air Force, and
Right.
vendors and so forth. I still
Right.
tell them what I have done. It does not matter what they think because people are good at posturing.
Yeah.
And so just knowing who you are and the value you bring, that kind of squashes a lot of things. And yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm at a stage and age in my life. I look for yeses and a lot of the noise. I just, it's like,
I
okay,
hear you.
unless you're, yeah,
Amen.
unless
Amen.
you're
Well,
talking something that makes sense, I'm just not going to entertain a bunch of nonsense.
I know it. And it's amazing what happens as you get older in life, right? You have a new appreciation for that stuff. Let me ask you, Loretta, because I want to take a step back. What made you want to get into the space? What made you want to get
Absolutely.
into IT
Yeah,
and so
I
forth?
kind of well, computer science in general. I was actually when I was at Grambling, I would
Yeah.
just say that I went to Grambling 1 year, a
Right.
long enough time to meet my husband, to enter Ken's family. But during that time, I didn't know, like their parents these days are very intentional. They kind of coach their children on what to major in. My parents didn't do that. My mother was a nurse. My dad told me he was an engineer on the railroad. Come to find out that does not exist, but, it is an engineer on the railroad, but
Right.
that discipline
Right.
does not exist.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, they didn't give me any kinda coaching, "Oh, go major in this." So, when I went to Grambling, I remember my friends, Peter Dyer and Connie White, they were picking out their classes. I didn't even care what classes I was taking. I literally was in whatever you give me, I'm cool
Okay.
with it, and so forth. And so, um, I remember Petra saying, and I think it was only Petra though, she was majoring in computer science. She said, "I'm going to take COPA the next semester." I said, "Oh, I think I'll take that too." And she said, "Girl, you're so crazy." And I never forget, that kind of turned on the light taking that class because what I learned is that I could write computer code that can control something.
Mhm.
And at that time, I just needed to control the air conditioning in my mama's house because she kept it too cold. And
Right.
so in my mind, I was like, we're going to write a program to control that. So that was the start. And then when I went back to Southern, of course, I continued in that path.
Mhm.
What led me to study AI, though, was my son being impacted with autism. And in my mind and I'm not a scientist like a biologist or a chemist and so forth. I'm not a doctor, have no interest. I have no interest in blood or nursing as my mother is. That's just not my interest. But what I did have in my hand was computer science. So at that time in the 90s, computer science was still in a phase of it. It's called the winter.
Mhm.
However, I learned of neural network during that time. So I work with the University of Washington. They gave me one researcher to help me to understand um, how to learn neural networks. And then Southern University bought some special software from a company in Pittsburgh that allowed me to simulate and do the modeling. I learned that. And what I studied, I was interested in understanding if damage happens to your brain, what can be done. That was
Mhm.
the thing. And so neural networks, of course, mimics the neurons in the brain pathways and so forth, the weights and the synapses and so forth. And so that allowed me to enter that space. What that looked like in industry is fault tolerance. That means when a damage happens to plant control, then you can actually have a backup system and have some level of productivity even when the system degrades.
Right. So you progress collegiately at Southern. You move further into your discipline, and then you graduate and you go out into the real world. What was that first opportunity for you?
Actually, I worked part time while I was at Southern.
Okay.
So I worked for 3 years. It was a bit for Dow Chemical
Okay.
as a computer analyst. And so and I was called a co-op, meaning I
Right.
worked
Yep.
part-time during the
Right.
year and then I worked full-time during the summer. It had to be either 2 or 3 years, yeah.
Okay.
So I did that. That gave me a great data point, in terms of having some knowledge on how you run programs, how you write code, and so forth. Those were programs for the plant controls, which was a great launching pad whenever Westinghouse was looking for a engineer. And the way that Westinghouse found me from being in Baton Rouge, because I really didn't apply to Westinghouse, but what happened William Gray, the representative William Gray, out of Philadelphia family, has roots at Southern University. At that time, he was on the board of Coca-Cola.
Mhm.
And the CEO of Westinghouse is Michael Jordan at that time, not the basketball
Yeah.
Michael
Right.
Jordan,
Yeah.
the businessman. Well, Michael Jordan is a businessman. The other Michael Jordan. He
Right.
was also on that board. Detroit Power and Light would not give Westinghouse a contract unless they had an African American in engineering. I was
Mm.
the first to be that African American. So William Gray went down to Southern. I made sure, and he didn't do it, but he made sure that a limousine brought me to Pittsburgh, and
Wow.
yeah, and so yeah, that's how I got that job. And that the engineering department was strategic engineering. It had started in 1966, and that was in the 92-ish, and
Mhm.
they had never had a Black engineer.
Hey folks, Kenn Rashad. We'll get back to the show in just a second, but I've got to take a quick pause just to put something on your radar. My business coach, Dr. Myron Golden, is hosting his next Make More Offers Challenge. And if you're serious about growing your business, scaling your income, and creating lasting impact, this is the place to be. It's 5 days of high-level teachings that'll show you how to structure, price, and position offers that don't just sell, but they help your business grow with purpose. I've been through this challenge myself, and it completely shifted the way I think about business, from how I build to how I serve. So do yourself a favor, go to offers.kenrashad.com and secure your spot for the next Make More Offers Challenge. Now let's get back to the show.
Let me ask you, were you when you said what Westinghouse, right?
Mhm.
Were you aware, were you like conscientiously aware of like what you were doing? I mean, were you aware of the impact that you being a Black woman in technology? And I guess, I mean, that's still rare. Correct me if I'm wrong, but were you aware at that time where you wanted to go? Were you intentional, or did things just kind of happen to the point to where you are right now? Was there that one moment that kind of led to you accelerating the way you did?
Well, I will tell you this. I knew in advance that I wanted to solve problems that were very hard because I was a Black woman.
Hmm.
And what that means is I took the jobs that were the career path that will allow me to solve hard problems. So instrumentation and control, which is what I did, allowed me to do that. That is literally helped to build a nuclear reactor in the Czech Republic. That's building the instrumentation controls for Entergy in Louisiana, the instrumentation and control for San Diego Power and Light. I knew that few people were going to do that, and the reason I thought that was important is because oftentimes, and this is the truth, that African Americans come into industry, they're brilliant, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, people do the same thing. Well, you're good with people. We want you in marketing of the product,
Yeah.
or we want
Yeah.
you in quality engineering, we want you in test, we want you in these areas of margin. And if you look at any business budget, those are a small part of the budget. When you're building a job, that's a small part of the budget. And what that means is it's not going to be but a few of them, and you could easily cut them, and they're very disposable. And so I knew that I needed to have solved very important problems to keep me engaged for the long term. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I
I
do.
have a career so long because I was always solving very hard problems. Hence, and when I entered the industry, I saw the evolution of different architecture styles and evolution of technology to now when I see a problem, I can literally have this association and I have a knowledge of how to do it, even though I wouldn't do it that way, but I know how to do it, and so forth. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so from that perspective, but in terms of being conscious about me being the only Black woman, I knew coming from Louisiana, it was obvious I was the only Black woman. But I didn't have like this complex, I would say,
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, I was happy to have a job."
Mhm.
Everybody was fine. Only hiccup was when OJ, because I was in Pittsburgh when OJ happened. And I I in a I got an email that I wasn't supposed to have where people were just trashing this guy and things like that. And then you learn industry, people don't want to eat with you, literally
Mm.
you start to eat alone at your desk. Or even in the cafeteria, people just don't want to. I remember running to a meeting and I opened the door and it was a bunch of guys just huddled in there because they just didn't want to be,
Wow. Yeah.
just want and that's it became okay because I
Right.
had a family. If had I not had a family
Yeah.
to balance that, wanting relationships with my colleagues, then I would probably have some issues. And a lot of people have had issues.
Yeah. Right. So you obviously you go through this journey, and eventually you decided to become an entrepreneur. Talk about that moment and what led to you eventually going into business for yourself.
Mhm. So business was always a part of my plan.
Mm.
So when I was 27 years old, no, it was before that. I think I was like 21. I was still in school. I wrote it down and I shared it with my mom. I think I even wrote it in the Bible. But I wrote
Mm.
it down, shared it with my mom, and it kept me on my path. I said I would do three things in life, which one of them was to earn a PhD. And the reason I wanted to earn the PhD because I knew that would give me access to the world.
Mm.
Literally, if you're not in business, the world has no interest in you. If you're not credentialed, the world has no interest in you.
Wow.
I'm talking about the globe, and so forth. So one or the other. And then I wanted to start a business. I knew that by 50, I was going to be done with industry. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I can't envision myself. I didn't understand then why, but when I started working in industry and even as a leader, I led $650 million projects. But as a leader, leading those large scale projects with 99.99% white men, then you're going to always have this friction from the inside. So,
Mm.
but business was a part of it. And then so it was getting a PhD, doing business from an early time frame, like in my 20s. I knew that that was a part of my path, and also writing books, which I still have not done. I've wrote papers, I've wrote my dissertation, but I have not written books, particularly the books I want to write
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you because on this show, obviously, we talk a lot about entrepreneurship and the journey that a lot of entrepreneurs kind of face. If you would, though, when you made the decision to start DS Innovation, were there any initial pains that you encountered that you weren't necessarily expecting?
Uh, yeah, getting customers. That's the main, you know.
That's
I remember a long time ago, even years back, in I think he passed. This man, he might be still living. So if he's still living, praise God for him. But he lives in San Jose. His name is John Wright. John
okay.
Wright probably is about 90 years old now. And John Wright was so successful in his business in his time. He was from Arkansas, the transplant to California. He had a business where he carried, um, organs, sensitive medical transports, right?
Mhm.
And so they have to be transported in cool,
Right.
transports.
Yeah.
And he was very successful. I went over there with my business plan. That was in 2004. I had started one, two, three businesses before DS Innovation. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah. And so I went over there with my uh plan, and he said, Loretta, you just need one person to say yes. So just one person. Well, that didn't happen for a long time. What really happened, having definitely the credentials, strong ties, my nonprofit helped
Yeah.
me
Right.
to overcome a lot of things in my for-profit, because uh, a lot of times, and I have an MBA as well, but oftentimes people tell you all the things you have to do before you start business. True, you need a plan, but you do not need to expend years doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go test the market, go test your
Mhm.
market, right? That's not very difficult to do. See if there's an interest. I knew that there was an interest. We're in a pull market for AI. People come to me. So I didn't have to do a hard sell for where I am. I just need to find the right person. So I did find that person. And what that looked like for me is I found a prime who did not have a conflicting of interest, and they allowed me to be their sub.
Okay.
And that was my entry point. And also doing business with higher institutions, that's another way that I was able to add value.
Mm.
Uh, from a research perspective, from even from a speaking perspective. One of the things I started doing years back, I became an external examiner for the University of South Africa. In
Mm.
other countries, they pay you $300 per paper. So I'm sorry, $3,000 per
Okay.
paper.
Okay.
So that's a nice um, way to, you want to get your name out there and
Right.
make sure that people not only know you, but they know the value that you can deliver.
Right. So you mentioned strong ties, and I unfortunately didn't bring that up at the introduction. At your nonprofit arm, if you would tell us a little bit about strong ties and what its purpose is.
Yeah. So in around 2014, it was established. But even before that, I was running camps, and I was getting my PhD. So just imagine, when you're getting your PhD in engineering, you don't have a lot of time.
Hmm.
So, but I heard this one lady say, "You might can't save the world, but you could go do one thing." I was like, "Okay, I can do one thing." So,
Right.
out of that became a, a event, and
Mhm.
then out of that became different programs and so forth to help students who may have interest to get into STEM or STEAM in that pathway. I use creative approaches, meaning I don't necessarily teach from just a blanket, let's learn programming. I always frame that around something of interest to the student, gaming or environmental issues or data science or AI,
Yeah.
those type of things. And that has worked really well for me.
Yeah.
Or even design. Right now, our students struggle with comprehension, with just thinking through things. And so some of the methodologies we've used in industry help them. I introduce it to them so that to help them to think through things.
Hey folks, it's Kenn Rashad. Quick pause. A lot of people rush into entrepreneurship by spending money first and asking questions later. They form an LLC, buy a logo, build a website, and still aren't clear on what problem they're actually solving. That's why I put together a free guide called Entrepreneurship 101, the no money starting playbook. It's designed to help you think through your idea before you spend a dollar so you can get clear on who you're serving, what they actually need, and whether your idea has real traction. This isn't about hype or shortcuts. It's about responsibility, clarity, and building something useful on purpose. You can download the guide for free using the link in the description. Get clear first, build intentionality, spend when it makes sense. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
What are you say your students? What are the age ranges in terms of who you assist?
Yeah, high schoolers,
High schoolers. Okay.
primarily high schoolers. Yeah, and my thought is, as you may and as you probably already know, oftentimes it's so awful. The schools, if a student in high school have not figured it out, they kind of give up on them.
Mm.
And oftentimes, particularly students who are on the margins are underserved in this population of making sure that they have the foundation they need to solve problems of the world. They don't get that contextualization in the classroom. It's just not there.
Yeah.
They're not getting computer science for the most part. And even if they were, just say forget about computer science, but they're not introduced to real world problems in a way that they see themselves represented, where they can even chime in. Even if you say you're a sports analyst, if you talk to anybody right now, I had Dale Ellis on one of my most kids didn't know who Dale Ellis was, but I had him to speak to our kids.
Right.
And he explained to them that everything is data driven now.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know that, you think you are going to play basketball, football, whatever the sport is, based on your talent alone, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, because those plays, your movement, everything is data driven, data analyzed, all
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
The game has changed.
So for the business owner or entrepreneur who's watching this right now, Loretta, and they may be one of those individuals who they still have goals of growing the business, but for whatever reason, and I think there are probably some people out there that probably feel this way, are just
Mhm.
adamant in not using AI, despite the fact that it has been said repeatedly, depending on where you are in your journey, that if you're not using AI, you're going to get left behind. And what would be your suggestion or recommendation in terms of how they should be thinking about AI from a practical standpoint?
Mhm.
Practical.
So, so I would just tell them to do the little homework, like look
Mhm.
at their industry and just look around and see where their competitors are going. If you see your competitors in marketing, for instance, if you see your competitors are able to flesh out a messaging strategy or a message matrix in a matter of seconds, and you don't even know what that is, or even a brand strategy in seconds, and you don't know what that is, or you see that you don't have the staff to do some of the things that you need, then you know, I'm saying AI, large language model, that can help you in that respect. Uh, Last year, I was asked to help an organization AI their office. What that looks like is taking Yeah, it looks like taking some of the forms that they have or reports, templating them, and making sure that they are efficient, right? And so forth. So some of the things that you may want to hold on to, you may not need to hold on to. But I would
Yeah.
say just literally, if you go to any of your conferences and you see those booths and you see innovators and displaying how, I guarantee you, you will see them
Yeah. Yeah.
displaying some AI enabled technology
So
in
despite
every industry.
so despite all of the advances that we see with AI right now, how it's helping people in, industry, how it's helping entrepreneurs, how it's helping, how it's being implemented in education and various facets in all walks of life. There are those instances where we hear the so-called fear stories or the fear of AI in terms of how it might impact us, say 5 or 10 years down the line. You being, I guess, safe to say, a leader in this space, are there any personal concerns that you have about AI, going forward, or are the fears that we supposedly hear about or read about, are they not unfounded?
No, 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 no. They most of them, the bias in the data is is definitely a real thing. Uh, we just have to think about what strategies need to be in place to counter those, right?
Hmm.
The generative AI that could go rogue and have you buck naked and create messaging that you never even thought. You're like, oh my gosh, I never thought I could flip like that. Well, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
So so there are some real consequences. Or, for instance, autonomous vehicles that may not
Mm.
know, your terrain or your community, and may not know, it just doesn't
We've seen instances of
out
that
those
happening.
states.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly right. Or even environmental,
Yeah.
right? It's just a lot of different things. There are a lot of different concerns. Everything from how do you learn? How does one learn with AI? The humanoids, what are they going to do to impact jobs? The humanoids are either soft bots or robots, right?
Hmm.
And so, how does that impact? How does reasoning impact? Literally, uh, how does healthcare? What's the change
Yes.
there when you
Ooh.
no longer have
Yeah.
you don't need to go to a human being for triaging. You can actually go to a kiosk. How does
Mm.
that work if you want to advocate for yourself? Knowing what data exists out there. Many people have used they use the characters where uh, there's a Chat GPT challenge that's happening right now, and you can put your image in, and then
Yeah.
it comes
Yeah.
out.
Can't
Yeah.
tell you right.
So when you do that, you're basically forking over your data, right? And so
Mhm.
if you're okay with that, someone basically aggregating all of your data and creating value and selling it back in chops and forms, they need to be able to have some agency over that, or have a say
Yeah.
in what that looks like. So it's different ways that AI could be harmful. Of course, we know surveillance and the whole idea of having wrongful detection using
Right.
object recognition and so
Yeah.
forth. Prediction, classification. What does that look like? We know that right now, ICE, for instance, is using biometrics, right?
Mm.
In some of their dealings with people, and they're using sophisticated AI to like tell where people are and so forth and who
Yeah.
they are. That's why that was a big threat with TikTok initially, because a lot of the platforms, they purport they don't know where you are, but TikTok did get you to your IP address. So
So
that's
so
a whole.
so the concerns that the government had about TikTok, were those valid concerns?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Because there
Yeah.
were a lot of people
Now,
who
I don't
thought
know
that it
if
was
they
just
have addressed it. They haven't addressed it. They just took it over for America. But the idea, I don't know if you've heard of 4-chain, 8-chain,
yes,
but
I've
the
heard of
idea.
it. I can't explain to you what it is, but I've certainly heard of it.
Yeah, so there are some platforms, as I mentioned earlier, there's litigation on what's the social media implications of the mind for children, right?
Mhm.
Causing them to commit suicide. Well, there are platforms, or were platforms, and I think they still exist, where you have um it takes it from the internet to a person's physical location. The idea is to take it, take the conversation from just chatting and messaging and eventually find
Yeah.
the person and do harm. And that's what those platforms were
Wow.
doing.
Yeah.
And then you have the whole dark web, right? That
Mhm.
allows for everything. I heard one person in the dark web, I was doing research last year, and one guy said, "Well, can we find people who are honest on this web?" It was the dark web. So
Wow.
they were doing bad things, but they thought they would have honest actors. So yeah, there are harmful things. And
Yeah.
again, um, engage in your community, find out about things.
Yeah.
As we know, even uh, AI is the justification for, if you think about data centers and what's happened in Memphis and what's happened in Texas and so
Right.
forth,
Yeah.
that data is stored in those data
Yeah.
centers and processed in those data centers. So what do you say about those things? Because the data centers, of course, have an impact or cascade effect on energy and water and the things that we already are constrained in our country. And especially in the Southwest as we are. So I would just say for the business owners, make sure that where you can engage. And that could look like writing a paper in your area of expertise. That could look like definitely showing up and having conversation in community. I'm not an advocate for being at every networking event to be at a networking event because that makes no sense, especially for a business owner. We're very busy trying to hopefully build products and
Right.
run your business. But I would say be strategic in your presence and make sure that uh, you're inserting your spaces in critical areas. As I last year I went to Switzerland and was a part of the Village Institute, this global learning conference. Is it a conference or a summit? Whichever. And that was the whole idea was to take the what conversations around the globe on learning and merge those with AIs. However you can get in these spaces. And again, I was invited in because I have all the credentials. Nobody can ever tell me I haven't done the homework. So
Right.
and so forth. So
Yeah.
just engage where you can.
Okay.
Convene your community if you can on a Saturday and say, okay, well, let's have a chat
Yeah.
about AI and how it's shaping our community. Even if you say, okay, well, I don't know everything about AI, oftentimes you can have access to academia if they want to, but if they don't, then you literally can go and just canvas what's happening in our world.
Yeah, that was going to lead me to my next question because though we talked about the so-called fears that people have about AI, what are some of the things that excite you the most about AI in terms of what we could possibly expect going forward? The good things.
Solving great problems really fast.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So what used to take me, for instance, it took over a year to build a login service, a login system.
A
Login
login
is
a login service?
logging, not
Yeah.
log in,
Yeah.
logging.
Logging. Okay. Gotcha.
The reaction is long.
Gotcha.
It took a lot of code to do that. Right now, I could crank that out in 2 days or a day.
Hmm. Okay.
And that's just one component. I always try to make sure people understand the vastness of AI. So AI has four pillars: comprehension, sight and recognition, and speech and language, and movement and automation.
Hmm.
And if you think of everything that the human body can do, AI has it has the same are trying to do the same thing.
You are without question, Loretta, a unicorn, if you will. Let's just keep it real. There are not a whole lot of people in your space who can do what you do. And as it relates to you being a Black technologist, if you will, what are what are some of the steps that future Black technologists can take to kind of find themselves in a position to where they too can have a seat at the table, where these decisions that ultimately impact society, where they can play a role and having a say in that? What are the steps necessary to make that happen?
Well, insert yourself in the space. That means, for instance, definitely you want to learn. That's a given, right? Have a baseline of understanding of whatever the knowledge, whatever
Mhm,
the topic is,
mhm.
just have a baseline of understanding. If you're not in this space, then figure out the skills that you have in your level of expertise in your business and see how they could parlay or complement in AI
Mhm.
or, or AI can complement it, right? And like I said, every state has these committees, commissions,
Yeah,
uh, every state has that. Because again, policy is driven
right,
by people chiming in, and oftentimes appropriations are then set,
right.
what people could get. And if you're not there to say, okay, well, I can do this, I can do that, or figure out how to push your product wherever your market is, right?
Mhm.
Whatever that is, you eventually you have to sell something. So um make yourself an expert,
Yeah,
and what that looks like is you're already an expert in your business, hopefully,
yeah,
right? You're expert in your business, and just know that AI is if it hasn't creeped over to your area, it's gonna do it. It
right.
will do it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, because you have the knowledge in your business, you are the best representative to know as much about what you do. So leverage that
mhm,
and talk about it. And you could talk about it through verbal, you could talk about it in writing, you could talk about it,
yep,
in different spaces,
yep,
the major conferences that are where conferences that are of interest to you. See if you could become a speaker
yeah,
and and I always say, because this, especially for women, I don't know how if men have this. I've heard it's imposter syndrome. I've never had imposter syndrome. You have to tell me to shut up. But some people do. Um, but if you lack the confidence, just know that right now, looking at our leadership, and
yeah,
I'm not going to say names, but just
yeah,
looking at our leadership, it should give you some kind of good feeling that you don't need you don't need to be rolling up from Harvard to be
yeah,
doing something.
yeah.
You could take what's in your hand and use it very well to actually step in the room with confidence and know your stuff and be
You know
able to
what?
offer something good.
You saying that reminds me of a clip, and I think you may have seen it. It was Barack Obama at a podcast indicating how obviously a former president of the United States, he's been at a lot of tables with a lot of leaders, and he indicated, and I'm paraphrasing here, he became quickly aware that the people sitting at that table weren't nearly as smart or weren't nearly as smart as a lot of people probably on the outside looking in probably thought. And it sounds as if you're saying the same thing. Those who supposedly have this imposter syndrome are probably much more equipped to do whatever it is that they're attempting to do, having that doubt, not realizing that whoever they're up against, they're probably much more qualified as well as much more capable of better equipped to do the exact same thing. A couple more questions before I let you go.
Mhm.
What kind of future are you personally trying to help build?
What kind of future am I personally trying to help build? Well, my goal in AI, period,
Yeah,
from the
as it relates to
outset
AI. Yeah, yeah.
was to create technologies that could be a part of AI good.
Mm,
And what that looks like, I'm interested in solving problems around, I studied water insecurity in the Southwest region, but what that looks like is creating products that could help considering many factors that's happening in the world that could help counter narratives. I particularly provided the first computational model for what we know as framing of news. I did that using AI and machine learning in our world, and I could say that because that's what you do in your PhD. You could say you're the first. So yeah, and so I am interested in longer term being on the side of AI for good, seeing how AI can help with push our environmental, the things we do for energy, the things we do for sustainability, the things we do for, like I said, narratives, what mechanism or instruments you could put in place to actually counter those things to, yeah, and even products that are for good. I'm not interested in identifying where people are in their homes to shoot them up. That's just not
Man,
the problem I'm trying to solve.
final question. What closing thoughts to that future Black girl who might be contemplating what to do going forward, and she sees this interview and she's decided she wants to go into the field of technology or AI, whatever that looks like, especially as it relates to maybe establishing a presence in a technical space. What would be your advice to that young girl, or even someone who's currently in college, who's Black and who's female and who has aspirations of possibly doing what you're doing right now?
Well, I would say go play sports like I did. 'Cause you know what? I am not kidding. Sports allows you to gain confidence. It's nothing like I played softball, so it was nothing like getting up to get to bat and everybody watching you, and either you hit it or you didn't. But in the Black community, when you hit it, you heard people boo, which is cool. And so or you heard your auntie say, "You better hit that ball." And so so I would say literally sports is amazing because it gives you so much confidence and
Mhm.
courage. It allows you to step out and it gives you that team base, to know that with the team you could do more. Like I said, it gives you courage, it gives you confidence. Yeah, it gives you discipline to work
Yeah.
on your own if you need to from an entrepreneur's perspective. So I would say that, like, that's something practical a high schooler could do. It allows you to see yourself being the bad news bearer because I wasn't good at first. Like literally, I wasn't good, but as I practice and practice and practice, I
Yeah.
got better, and so forth, which is good because there is nobody that you look at in business right now that was a superstar when they started. They might look
Mhm.
like a superstar, but everybody has to grow, and there is no instant. It's no instant coffee in
Yeah.
business. It just doesn't happen. So that's something practical you could do, say, but if you're not a sports person, I would say if you have have an interest in art or
Mhm.
interest in music or interest in whatever the area is or interest in engineering, make sure that you either join a club, see who's doing what in your community, get involved. If you're the only one, change that picture and just be that only one. So and then
Yeah.
try to bring some people in, bring a friend along so you won't be lonely. Those are some of the practical things, and that's for any child.
Mhm.
For a Black girl, I would say confidence. Literally, uh, one thing I learned in the South and growing up in a Black community helps you so much because you gotta talk trash. Literally, if you don't learn anything else, you gotta learn how to talk trash because people will dominate you. And so, so that has really gone a long way for me. And you could be humble. One thing, I'm growing up in the South, we were taught as a baseline, no matter where you are and who you are, you never think people are below you, never think they're above you.
Mm.
You are human. And
Mhm.
so, with that being said, just know you're a human. And I will tell you the way that I used to look at when I'm given for instance, a presentation before the Coast Guard, and I'm the only woman, and of course, the only Black in the room, is when you look out into that audience, pretend like they are family and they smile, even if they're
Mhm.
not.
Mhm.
That goes a long way, and that takes away the fear. And do your homework. Don't go and try to be like, for instance, I have kids now. Unfortunate with social media, everybody want to be a superstar.
Yeah.
And one kid said to me last year during a summer camp I was hosting, he said, "Well, I've been around the world and I want to solve the hunger, world homelessness or
Yeah.
something like that."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, where have you been?" And he said, I had to break him down so that he could think, so that he could get a somber. And it wasn't to break him down for the purpose of making him embarrassed. It was for him to calibrate and be sober about where he is. But he only had visited 2 states in the United States. But because social media tells you you got to look fabulous and you have to look bigger than you are, and there's no growth and development stage of your life, that everybody wants to look big. Well, that's not true. There is a ground zero. And ground zero is nothing wrong with being at ground zero, but know that you have to take those steps to get where you are.
Yeah.
So that's what I would just tell, any girl, that you could do it. I'm an example of anything is possible.
Mm.
I know.
She is she is Dr. Loretta Cheeks, founder and CEO of DS Innovations. Lady, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to leave your audience where they can find me. You can look for more information, definitely on DS Innovation AI.com. Look me up on LinkedIn, connect with me. If you need speaker or you need someone to explore what's possible for you as a business owner in AI, I am here to be your personal consultant and definitely provide your team with training as you see fit.